All right, welcome. I'm Keith Reynolds, founder and CEO of Publio. This is the Publio podcast, Follow Your North Star. This show is for CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, and managers who want to use media to grow their business and surround it with inbound marketing, fill that pipeline up with the prospects that they're trying to bring into their business. So we love to geek out about this, and we'd like to talk to other CEOs and other interesting people, and I think we nailed that one this time, Jesse.
Yeah, we did for sure.
So we at Publio, we do, besides this podcast, we've got a workshop as well as doing turnkey strategy consulting and helping companies stand up their media, and we just love to talk about it. So Jesse, before we get started, I heard you work this weekend.
Oh yeah. Spent a lot of time in the editing room. Yep, staring at yours and my faces all weekend. A lot of fun.
On that monster computer you just got.
Oh yeah. I built my own computer not too long ago.
Having fun with that?
Oh yeah. It makes it so much easier.
All right. Well, it's putting on a great show for us, and why don't we get rolling with it? We have Bryce Wade today. Bryce is pretty amazing guy out of Vancouver, British Columbia, and he and his partner started out with traditional SEO, and they've moved into artificial intelligence and have 7 tools that do everything from write and help distribute content and figure out what Google wants and needs. And he got pretty philosophical on this conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely. Borderline Matrix and Terminator when it came to artificial intelligence. But no, I mean, it's so crazy to think about, like, the things that used to take weeks and weeks to do in SEO and in writing, and now it just happens in seconds. I mean, technology is moving faster than we can work with it almost.
Yep, and we can do it from anywhere.
Yeah.
It was really great to have him. Well, let's not talk about him. Let's go talk to him. How are you, Bryce? Welcome.
Hey man, thanks for having me on today, man. It's been a really fantastic time in recent weeks. We got some beautiful weather out here. How about yourself, man?
It's been great. I've been traveling Atlanta and Florida and working out of the New York City area, and it's all been just sunshine and rainbows.
Best place to be.
Welcome to our virtual studio. I'm really interested to, again, we've met on some networking groups virtually, and you have an amazing story. I'm really looking forward to get it out to our CEO audience.
Absolutely.
Mind of a Marketer has some pretty cool stuff to get your company coverage in the niche that you have from an SEO and a news perspective. Mm-hmm. And you're deeply involved in artificial intelligence and marketing. Tell us a little bit about your company and what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So the genesis of the company really came from my business partner, Earl Flormata, who's been the evil marketing genius for a long time. That's kind of his moniker. I'm the Google cowboy, by the way. So everybody's got like a cool Avenger type name. And what really happened is that Earl is very powerful tech guy. So we used to work for the Pentagon, used to work for big banks, used to do tech support for all these big places, right? Got dragged kicking and screaming into sales, made more money in a month than he did in a year being a tech guy. So he's like, okay, well, I guess I'm doing tech now, or sales, sorry. And then he ran out of people to sell to and started doing marketing. So he has a really high level of skill set in these 3 areas, which are usually totally different disciplines. So what came of that is basically he sat down because his wife banned him from going outside during the pandemic, and started making really cool stuff. And what came of that is that now we have a number of different systems and products that use AI to great effect. So you mentioned news and like a PR aspect. That one actually is one of the few that doesn't use AI. But one of the things that it does do is a distribution network, right? So you're a content guy, right? So let's say, you want to get a whole bunch of your content out to a whole bunch of people all at the same time. we can deploy that across our distribution network to over 400 sites. So it does really good stuff for PR, does really good stuff for your SEO, variety of different reasons, and gives you good press, right? And you can never have too much good press about your company, right?
Any press is good press. Well, that was what drew me to you, was the idea of leveraging these news distribution networks to enhance your SEO and reduce your duplicate content.
Yeah, exactly.
Scoring with Google. But then as I got to know you, the tools that you're using on content creation are really interesting. Tell us a little bit about why you got into AI and how you define AI and why it's important for your customers.
Yeah, so this is actually a really important question for not just marketing, not just CEOs, but our whole economy. And let me give you a kind of overview of why. So, before the pandemic happened, everybody was basically in their city, unless you had a really digital nomad job where you work from anywhere. But basically, a lot of people realized that you could work from anywhere, because if you can work from home, well, why couldn't you work for somebody on the other side of the country, right? Or on the other side of the planet as well, right? And over the pandemic, I've talked to a number of different people that have started doing exactly that, because you make more money, conceivably, it's more efficient, you stay at home, you don't have to sit hours in traffic. So there's really been an optimization in people's deployment of their time for their skills. And so really, when you think about AI, that's exactly what AI is, right? Because you pay money to some person for their skills to do a job, whatever that happens to be, right? And when you think of AI is basically taking a process that somebody does and magnifying it with speed and efficiency, right? So there's kind of an old joke that an AI is only as good as who designed it, right? And that's true to a degree, right? But once you actually figure out what that AI needs to do, it can do it at such a blinding speed, it's actually insane. And I'll point to one thing in particular that's really taking the marketing industry in particular by storm. So one of our AIs that was developed over the last couple of years was one that actually affects Google, right? So one of the things that Google is famous for, and that they literally planted their flag on, is ads for Google search, right? So Google search engine marketing is one of the biggest marketing networks, if you want to think of it like that, on the planet. They make in the neighborhood of, like Google makes in the neighborhood of 170 odd billion dollars a year from all of their systems, and 70% of that comes from SEM. Okay, so that's roughly 110, 120 odd billion dollars. Okay, so
search engine marketing.
Yeah, search engine marketing, like Google AdWords. Sorry if that wasn't clear to everybody. And so because of this massive amount of money that's being deployed on this, right? Some of the companies that spend money on this spend millions of dollars per month. Okay, and now that's thousands, tens of thousands in Amazon and similar sized companies' cases, hundreds of thousands of keywords that they're spending money on. How, as anybody, could you possibly manage that at scale? It's literally, you can't, is the short answer. So what generally happens is there's best practices within an industry, this one in particular, that says do X, Y, and Z, you get X amount of return, and you're happy because it's more than zero and you get a good return, right? That's why people do it. So it is effective, but it's also very efficient. And there's a particular inefficiency that we actually discovered within this ecosystem. We built an AI to solve it. And we keep this secret between all of your viewers.
Not telling anybody.
But there's probably but there's probably about a 5 to 15% inefficiency within that ecosystem that we discovered, that we're helping companies through this AI that just maximize their ROI. So let's just say that a company spends $1 million per month on SEM, right? Basically anything above $50,000, there's probably enough of an inefficiency using this AI to fix that's worth installing it to help you. And it's very simple to install. And basically what happens is it just sits there and scans what a human could never do. Because if you think of me as a person sitting at a computer, okay, I check this keyword, I check that keyword, like there's just a maximum amount of attention span, finger speed, like so much. It's just more than a human can handle, quite frankly. And there's a whole bunch of things like that in the economy that really demand AI. Because now back in the day before the internet, you just didn't work at the scales like this, right? You just didn't have massive global companies in the way that we do now. Like Apple's a $2 trillion company. I guarantee you they use AI in many different places to optimize the labor force that they have. And that's, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think you're bringing an important point about AI is that it improves things qualitatively in ways that no human could ever do. And I think there's a lot of fear around, is it replacing jobs? But it's really about creating entirely new opportunities we couldn't have even thought of before.
Yeah, and I think that's an important factor. So I actually disagree with that. I think there is definitely replacement happening, and there's a video that I can share later that's basically I can't remember the odd name of it. Something need not apply, or labor need not apply, or something. There's a video that basically says, you know, there's a vast majority of jobs that are going to be automated essentially, and you know, medical care, like, and I actually have one. So we have another AI that is for writing, so like AI written content for SEO purposes that is indistinguishable from human written content, and it's incredible. Like, and it's kind of scary in some ways. But one of the things that this allows companies and decision makers to do is, if I'm putting money into doing something that now no longer needs, humans need not apply. Yes, exactly. That's the one. So that's a really, really good overview, and it is kind of scary. But one of the things that this process allows us to do is the repeatable, the mundane, you know, those
they don't add a lot of value.
Right. It's just monotonous and it's repeatable. So like VAs is a big thing right now because, you know, they're cheaper than somebody in North America. So that is moving a job. But now, what does this person in North America now do, right? So a big thing that I've always thought of is, okay, great, we eliminated some jobs. What is that going to be replaced with? Because people still need to do stuff, right? So does that mean the creative end of things needs to be increased? Does that mean the, you know, the R&D side needs to be increased so that we have more new stuff, right? Because a business really operates on what is your core competency and how does that get deployed into the market that somebody pays you for your service and your skills.
How do you innovate? Continually innovate around your core competency. Yeah,
exactly. And the better you are at whatever that is, the higher somebody will pay you for their honor of using your services, right? and one of the things that I really think AI is having an impact on is the enterprise level stuff, because, you know, these are not cheap. These are not cheap things. These are not cheap solutions, right? And just as an example, I have another friend that specializes in AI. There's this thing in SAP, okay, that this process, basically like an assessment process. Apparently this used to take like 5 years or like 2 years because SAP is a dinosaur, right? Mm-hmm. But if you still use it, it's a huge part of your organization, right? And having this assessment done used to take a huge amount of time. They got it down to 1 day. Like, how much money, like, and he was telling me this is like $1 million solution to figuring out your situation for SAP. It allows you to do a whole bunch of stuff, but taking that from a year down to a day is an insane amount of optimization and efficiency that we've really never seen ever before in human history. Right. And that's the thing that's exciting, right? Because, okay, what happens if we have a great new idea and it's going to take hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of years to complete, but now, you know, we throw some AI in some portions of that, and now your product or your deployment or whatever is increased. Like, the speed of that process is increased by orders of magnitude. What does that mean for R&D? What does that mean for the market?
I mean, you're making my case, right? It's qualitatively improvement. You can look at jobs being removed, but that's in a vacuum. Right? Mm-hmm. It's actually in a larger system, and it requires us to continually innovate and get educated. But marketing's not going away because we have AI.
No, absolutely not. And one of the big things, and this is something that's really important too, is that sales is never going to go away. You're always going to have somebody on the other side of a phone to say, hey, is this solution going to work for you or is it not? Let's figure it out. And an AI is just never going to be able to do that. It can do analysis. It can qualitatively show you data about stuff. It can show you data in a way that's easier to understand. It can give you better situational awareness. But nobody no computer, I think, is ever going to take away the job of somebody saying, hey, let's figure this out together. And that's really what sales is all about. And that is always going to be a core component of any business, I think. So anybody that's in sales is probably safe.
So sales and marketing has a lot to gain from AI. What other kind of benefits are you seeing by the work that you're doing in terms of the way you add value to your customers?
It really depends on the size of client, right? Like I was mentioning before. So enterprise clients are going to see a lot bigger value in these types of systems because they have somebody that's supposed to look for them, right? So they're going to be able to invest the time. Hey, go find us a solution to this problem that we're having, or if somebody calls them up and says, hey, we've got a solution to a problem you didn't know you have, that's kind of another discussion. But small businesses too are able to benefit from this as well. Like just give a simple example of let's say a financial planner. Okay, so there's literally tens of thousands of them all over the place. It's a very profitable industry because it works on a long LTV, long lifetime value. And if you can optimize, let's just say the paperwork. Now, me, the financial planner, isn't sitting clicking on a computer saying, XYZ person needs XYZ file and send that off. If you can just automate just the paperwork aspect of that, how much more time do you now have for delivering your service, working with a client, or finding more clients, right? Because all pieces of businesses fall into two categories: delivering the product or finding people and selling the product. So if you can now take away a big piece of the deployment and the delivery of said product, now you can focus on finding more people and growing the business itself. And I think that's where the big benefit to AI, sorry to cut you off, but I think that's where the big benefit of AI is reducing the capital in time and capital itself of delivering your products.
And so adding more to the bottom line, which is really what we're about. So when we have a content strategy, we want to build as large an audience as possible. We want to bring as many of them into the funnel as we can, and we want to have individual relationships with as many of those people in order to generate sales. And you're talking about throughout that workflow, being able to add value, and not only in volume, but qualitatively.
Absolutely. And so I was just speaking on the back end, but that's like the absolute bottom of the funnel because now you're in deployment, right? But it can also work on the top of the funnel too. So like I was mentioning, we have one that optimizes SEM. We have another one that optimizes SEO content. We have another AI because we have about 7 in the company last time I checked, I think. And this does all of the SEO, like the basic SEO. So let's just use a simple calculation because I think this illustrates really well the power of AI. So SEO, which is one of our core competencies, takes time and a lot of money, right? Because let's say your website has 1,000 pages, okay? Let's say that there is 5 changes per page that need to happen. That's 5,000 changes. Let's say each one of those changes takes a couple minutes to do. Like just 2 minutes even, and it's probably more than that. So 10,000 minutes divided by 60. I can't do that math, but whatever that math is, yeah, many hours. And so let's just say 25 minimum bucks an hour for a decent SEO person to do all of those changes. You're looking at tens of thousands of dollars minimum to SEO your website, right? Just basic stuff that has to be repeated 1,000 times. We built an AI that can do that in one day. So like done. So how much money do you just save doing that? Now, like I was saying, that eliminates that job for that SEO person, but this only does the basics, right? So now you have that SEO person that has a high skill go do the more advanced SEO things that would help that website more than just him doing the absolute basics, right? So what I think the big value for AI is cut out the basics, have everybody upgrade their skills. So now how do I move this skill forward in the industry? How do I add more value to the company I'm working for than just doing repeatable stuff all the time? Very
cool. So what are those 7 AIs? You've kind of mentioned them in the conversation. Give us a little more specifics about what you're doing.
Okay, so at the top, I think the biggest one that would have the most value to enterprise is so we call this ad cannibal. So it essentially looks at the SEM or the Google AdWords, optimizes that and saves them the money, and they can redeploy that into their budget. Basically, you can buy more keywords or do more growth with it. Very, very effective for increasing ROI on ad spend. So that's number one. So number two is we have a system called accelerated SEO. Basically, we're a part of a network of 50,000 domains. So each keyword we give backlinks to our clients. And what the power of this is that you get valuable backlinks from people that are in your industry. So you can imagine 50,000 domains is a lot to manage, right? So you can't have somebody sitting there, I wonder which one would be best for this. So we have a little bit of an AI assist on that to say, okay, this is the silo of the type of company. This is where they are. What do we want out of our list of 50,000 domains? So that's number two. Number three is the AI SEO. I'm usually pretty good at naming stuff. We really didn't have a good name for that one. So it's just AI SEO. And that basically it does what I was saying earlier, is that it just looks at a website, does all of the SEO optimizations of like the basic SEO on a large website in one day like that. That is a very good solution for like e-com websites that grow a lot of content, because it just takes forever to optimize all of that stuff after it's been posted, right? So that's a really good solution for them. So that's number three. Number four is the AI writing tool that I mentioned, that it actually uses 2 AIs in that process. So that's technically 5, but it's one product. So what happens is basically so somebody comes to us and says, hey, we want some content for this. We're like, okay, great. Let's look at what's going to rank well for that. So essentially we take the content, we scan the content for the top like 10 positions for that, put it into the AI writes a bunch of stuff. We take another AI, use it on that AI written content to see how it's going to rank, and if it's good content, basically it gives us a score of like 1 to 100%. Usually we get around like 60-70%. We do a little bit of editing, gets it up to like 80-90%, something like that. And then we use some VAs to actually do a little bit of editing and have a call to action for the client. That's number 5 technically. So 4. The next one is we have 2 other ones that we don't really sell, but we do have, that basically can do a deep dive on a website. So let's say that you've done a whole bunch of content, because the 3 pillars of SEO are the basics of your website, how it's built, how it's designed, all the stuff that's actually on the website, so like on-page optimization, basically. The second is content, which is a big piece of what you do, and you do fantastically, might I add. And then backlinks and how much link juice and how much trust that Google gives your website, so how well connected you are to the rest of the internet. So what this does, basically, this AI, is rips apart the on-page stuff. So it like, here's 10,000 optimizations that you should go and fix. And this is beyond the basic AI one that I was mentioning earlier. So this is like a deep dive. So it rips apart absolutely everything and says, go fix this. Should this be italicized? Should you have this much content? Should you have, it does a really big deep dive on that. And so that's number 6. And number 7 is another AI similar to that one, but it does slightly different. So there's a joke at SEO that what we think we do, what everybody else thinks we do, and you've seen that meme, right? And what we actually do is just pray to Google that we get blessed by rankings from Google. The god of the internet is the joke, right? And so what this AI does is looks at SEO in a slightly different way, that says, let's go and look at the top 10 rankings for whatever keyword that you want to rank for, and see what this how do I say this, analytically, what this collectively ranks for. So it basically gives a recommendation of, here, please do this, and like, so here, this much content, put this here. So it gives you a recommendation on what to add or take away from your site. And just as an example, we did this for a client that had like a 10,000 word article on their website. We did this scan and said, hey, you need to remove 4,000 words off of this article. And for anybody that knows SEO, that's like, no, more is better. But well, that's what it says. Let's try it. Right to the top. because so it looks at what's already ranking, not what we think Google wants. That one looks at what is already doing well and whatever the analysis says from that. So that's the 7. You're muted.
You're using a series of AIs to increase the volume, increase the quality, and make a better business proposition for content.
Yeah. Good.
Tell us a couple case studies. You mentioned one, but talk to us about use cases and the kinds of things that you can talk about in terms of how customers are using this.
Sure. Well, I'll start. Sure. And I'll start from the top again. So one of the, I probably shouldn't say what the actual client is. So I'll just kind of use vague wording. So with the ad cannibal that optimizes, SEM. So we already have about $2.5 billion of ad spend under management through this process. So there's some Fortune 500 companies in that. There's some fairly large companies saving like an extreme amount of money. That's really impressive. I can't go too deep into details, but one of the ones that we can do a scan outside of the company without doing an install, so we can get a rough idea of what they're doing. So I did a scan on a university, one of the big universities. They spend $3.5 million per month on SEM, right? Or Google AdWords. And we did a scan of this and we found 10%. So 10% of that $3.5 million could be redeployed into either more keywords or other, pieces of their budget, basically. So $350,000 we could save them right off the bat just by installing this, and that's per month. So I mean, $3.5 million of your budget's being wasted on an annual basis, potentially, depending on how much is being spent
for one university.
For one university, yeah. And so, like I was saying, we have about 2% of the total market share with that right now, and this could be easily deployed across anybody that spends more than $50,000 per month. I can pretty much guarantee between a 2.5 to 15% savings. I've seen as high as 30%. But that's fairly rare. The average is about 10%. So that's a really good example of how easy AI could optimize somebody's company and spend an ROI with almost basically no capital expenditure, because we have a performance-based model, so we don't charge unless we save. So instantly doesn't take any extra labor from the company. You just, hey, here's a bunch of money, go deploy it somewhere else. So that's the easiest one to point to. Another really good one is what was the other one? The AI SEO. So this was originally built for a large e-commerce website that did army surplus, right? So they would basically buy stuff from the army at wholesale, but they would get like a container of stuff every week. So their process, their SOP was essentially take a picture, throw it on the website, get it up there, index it, move on, because they have so much stuff coming in that there's no time to optimize that whatsoever. So we built this AI specifically for them and websites like them, because they had tens of thousands of web pages, like 10,000 different SKUs and more coming all the time. So when we installed this, there was I think there was over 1 million changes that had to happen, because absolutely nothing was optimized. So like no tags were done properly, H1 tags were done improperly, image tags done improperly, like nothing, literally
they
nothing.
They were invisible from a SEO perspective.
Exactly. And that was, so like you obviously have the content of this is a picture of it and this is a description of it. So you have a little bit of content, but if the images aren't optimized, if the H1 tags aren't done properly, Google doesn't see it as well, right? So that we optimized this, and they did much better. I can't jump into the details, but they did a lot better with just that, and that was no linking whatsoever. But they just had such a monumental amount of content that it had a huge impact on their business.
I think you highlight why a CEO and the C-level should care about SEO, right?
Yep.
Because if you were going to build a building for your company, mm-hmm. and it required traffic, if it was a retail or a hospitality kind of business, mm-hmm. and you saw the plans and the front door was facing the alley, you'd step in, right? And what you basically just outlined is the case that while this is a bit technical, you don't have to know how to build a building and a restaurant. You don't have to know how to do SEO, but the implications of why it's important and how at what level to understand it are all about helping you make more money and be more efficient and deploy your resources effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a fantastic point. And I'll give two simple examples to really drive it home even further. So let's say that you build a physical building somewhere, like you were mentioning, right? You have to put a sign on it for people to know even what the hell you do, right? And that was what marketing was, in the 1800s and everything before. He said, I'm a cobbler, or I'm a carpenter, blacksmith. Everybody knew what the blacksmith was, right? Because that was the only thing that had a sign. And everything else was just somebody's house, right? And so things have really advanced quite far, right? But what there 50%, okay, like 50% of all traffic to all websites come from Google, right? Now think of this. When was the last time when you were searching for something that you went past the first or maybe the second page?
Oh,
never.
Very rarely.
Yeah, never, because Google is so good at saying, "Oh, you're looking for this? Please go here." So that's why Google AdWords are so effective, is because that's essentially position 0, right? So there's two types of people on the internet. And it usually depends on your age. So there's people that click on ads and people that don't. I'm somebody that absolutely does not, unless I don't like the company. I'm like, oh, Disney, screw you, because they screwed Disney. Up. Yeah, well, they screwed up Star Wars, so I'm never going to forgive them for that.
Oh, they are one of our sponsors. So.
Oh, really? Okay, sorry, Disney. I love Disney. They're super great. Just didn't like The Last Jedi. But anyways, So 50% of all traffic goes there, right? So it's search intention, right? Because people are searching for something, and Google has basically trained us to be like, oh, this is number one, that must be the best, right? So we equate number one to the best answer to what we're looking for, and that like 30% of that 50% goes to number one ranking. So being number one on a particular thing is very, very important for your business. And if you don't have SEO or your ability to be found by the people that are looking for your business, not only do you not exist for the vast majority of those searches, but all of that goes to your competitors in one way, shape, or form, right? So there's always going to be value in being where people are looking for you. And this is why the content that you make is so powerful, because there's a lot of people that search for, how do I do something? What is this? What is that? How do I do this? The how and the what questions are a source of leads for your business, because not only are you helping somebody, right? And reciprocity is a really important piece of how we operate as humans, because if you do something for me, well, I'm more likely to do something for you instead of exactly, right? And so creating content around these, not necessarily buying keywords, is a really important factor to bringing them into your sphere of influence and having them know your name, right? People talk, companies talk all the time about brand recognition. Well, what about what you actually give to your clients, and why would they know your brand, right? So even if you show me a bunch of ads a bunch of times about, hey, you're trying to sell me your stuff, but if you haven't done anything for you, but I go to somebody else's website and here's a free guide on how to fix your life, or, do this thing that you care about, well, I'm much more likely to go with them than you, even though I've seen your ad a million times, because they've actually helped me. So content has become this super huge and very important piece of a proper marketing strategy, because now you just have so many options. That's why everything is so expensive now for marketing. I have 1,000 different options to do the same thing. Why would I go for you? Why would I go with you? Why would I deal with you? Unless there is something to pull me in that adds value to me prior to you trying to sell me stuff. And that's how we work, right? Let me try and add value to you before I try to sell you anything, because I want to see if this is going to be a good,
that's the inbound way. And really, right? So content marketing is closely tied to getting inbound traffic to your business. And the foundation is SEO. It is the structural way and the communications way that people understand who you are when they're interacting online, which is in this world, it's more and more important. Even a physical business has to have a presence or be ignored by a large portion of your audience.
Absolutely. And one of the big things to that, so you produce all of this fantastic content. You pay a writer, you pay a content person like yourself to make amazing content. How do you then get it to people, right? How do people see it, right? Is it social media? Is it SEO? Is it SEM? Is it whatever else? Is it mail-in orders? Is it a magazine? It really depends on knowing where your audience is to try and connect with them, right? Because the big thing about Google is it's universal. Everybody uses Google, regardless of anything. Everybody is on Google. Everybody, because it's become such an important part of our lives. Really think about how much time it took you to research anything prior to Google.
Absolutely.
You had to go to a library and sit there for hours.
So getting your SEO right sets the foundation and makes your advertising spend at a more efficient and more effective, so you don't have to spend as much on advertising, right? So there's definitely a correlation, and we've seen by helping people get themselves a content strategy that's comprehensive. Not just what are you going to say and who are you going to say it to, but how are you going to distribute it and how do you leverage all the things you're talking about from an SEO standpoint? Because Google spent billions of dollars on MIT trained PhDs who have algorithms to help figure out what humans want. And that it's there for us to take advantage of or ignore at our own peril. Right?
Absolutely.
And so what you're doing is offering a more efficient and effective way to operate at scale with large amounts of content.
Yeah, and you can really think, and you really should think of marketing in one of two silos, right? So there is strategic and there is tactical. So SEO is a tactical option for increasing traffic, right? But the strategic side of it is, what is your content? How is it displayed? And so a lot of what you do is strategic, and then you use tactical things to then deploy that content in various ways, SEO being one of them, right? And the better message you have that connects better with your target audience, the better return that you're going to have on that. And positioning is a really important part of that. So another one of the things that we've taken on recently is this term that we coined called BEO, which is business engine optimization. So essentially what happens is we ask a bunch of dirty questions about your business. Hey, do you have a content plan? Hey, do you have a lead generation system? Do you make money off of your website? Do you do JVs with anybody? And in this process, you ask all these dirty questions to a business, and ourselves included. When we did this, we're like, wow, we are very unoptimized. But we do this to basically like multi-million-dollar companies. So a couple of these questions basically added over $1 million to the revenue with a couple. So let me give you a quick example. So one of the questions for this is, if I was to ask your staff, across your organization, exactly what you do and exactly what your market dominating position is, to what degree would I hear the same thing that you just told me? And this is after a previous question of, what is your MVP? And so if that question is no, or you wouldn't, well, you've lost a bunch of money just by that. And to drive this home, so we were working with about a $20 million roofing company to do this. And so we asked them, so what does your company do and where are you focused on growing the business? And they said, we want to do insurance, we want to do cash jobs, and we want to do commercial. We're like, okay, great. We just asked this question. That guy right there, bring him in here. And so this is just some guy walking down the hall, right? And we bring him in and ask the same question to him, and he's like, "Oh, we're storm chasers," which is basically, a storm happens and you run after everybody to fix the roof. And so everybody in the room was like, what they did.
You're singing my out of my hymnal here, right? Content strategy is as much about the team and their ability to understand and execute it in their day-to-day job as it is about just doing SEO or writing an article. So
100%.
Thank you for the plug.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why what you do is so important, right? And so what they did, so this was one question out of, I think there's about 50 in the process that we were doing with them. So that one question, they were like, okay, we need to fix this. So they had about 250 staff across their company. So they had a big meeting that said, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're about now. This is where we want to go. That's it. They added like $500,000 to the bottom line because there was so many people that were like, "Oh, we do that? Oh, okay, I know Bob and Jim and like, and they just like they got referrals from their own staff, knowing this is what they wanted to do. So organizational cohesiveness and consistency is really important too, and this is the internal stuff. So marketing is all external, right? Everything that you say about your company is for the purpose of talking to somebody else. So you can also optimize inside the company and say, hey, where can we be more lean? Where can we be more profitable? Where can we, do joint ventures? Where can we improve our message, right? And a big factor for that is the MDP, or the market dominating position. What makes you different from everybody else? What makes me want to go with you as opposed to everybody else? And here's the kicker: you can't say quality and service, because everybody can say that.
Because everybody, it's so funny. That's the pat answer that you get. But what's your North Star?
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yep.
So that brings us up on a great way to land the plane. So what kind of people do you work with, and how do they get in touch with you, and what's your process to work with them?
Sure. So we actually run the gamut across the industry, because SEO is basically pretty agnostic in both industry and size, because we can basically work with anybody. So the SEO side of things, if you're like a multi-billion-dollar company, like a large enterprise, our SEO stuff, it really depends on what you're trying to do. So the short answer is we would probably want to work with enterprise clients on the ad cannibal or SEM optimization side first, because there's basically three sides of our company. There's our retail side, there's our JV side, so we work with other marketing agencies to give them some of our tech, and then there's like the consulting side. That's okay, you want to take market share, you have a big budget, okay, we can talk about that, but that's not like our off the shelf type of stuff. So for our retail side, we generally work with medium-sized businesses between 2 million to 25 odd million. For the SEO stuff, because it works really good on that size of company, because it's very targeted and does a lot of impact
quickly too.
Exactly. But for the larger companies, like we would want to do like at least a discovery call to see what they're really after, because the SEM side, if they spend more than $50,000 a month, I guarantee we can work together and I can save you some money and you'd be really happy.
And pay for the work that you do.
Yeah, it's all performance based. There's no risk. 30-day trial. It's one of the best deals, one of the best products I've ever seen in my whole life.
Well, I look forward to working with you on it too.
Sorry, and how do they get in contact? So my email is bryce.wade, BRYCE.WADE @mindofamarketer.net.
Outstanding. Bryce, this has been fantastic. Anything else, Jesse and Lorna?
Well, Bryce, just from an audience perspective, I'm sure it's on everybody's mind. In 30 years, am I going to have to hire Arnold Schwarzenegger to come back in time and take you out, or are we okay?
It's funny that you mentioned that. So somebody asked me a couple of years ago, like, where do you see SEO going, right? Because we have, I mentioned that like there's a network of 50,000 domains that we have. Big SEO might be a thing in the near future, right? Because so think of it like this. This is actually something interesting that I thought about when I got into SEO. Being first, or being on the first page of Google, is so important to some businesses because it brings in so much money. Well, how much is that actually worth, right? Because right now it's charged as like a retainer or per keyword. There's a couple different strategies for it. But if you can basically guarantee a company, hey, I'll get you to #1 and you'll have this sort of return, there is so much value in that. Well, if a company does that so well, you're basically just getting companies that are taking first positions on certain keywords. And so you have that company eventually would have an unimaginable amount of power. Because right now Google has that power, but if Google's only showing you what somebody else is optimized for, well, yeah, that's a different game.
I look forward to that.
Well,
Yeah,
we
I
look
just
forward
wanted to say thank you. This has really been awesome episode, Bryce. Thank you. What a game changer. I've been listening to all the nuggets and quite excited for more people to hear what you're doing.
Yeah,
So.
my pleasure. It's been super fun. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we look forward to working together with you as well. It's I think we got some really interesting synergies.
Yeah, absolutely. So I look forward to it. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for joining us. All right. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Publio podcast. We've enjoyed having you part of our show. If you like what you hear, please like, share, and comment across social media and below. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all of those by searching for Publio. If you are interested in taking our course, please check us out. If your business is in need of a content strategy, we've got a program for you. It's a fully interactive course with worksheets and workbooks and videos, and we'd love to have you be part of the class, and you can always join us for office hours or make one-on-one appointments as well. So check us out at Publio, PUBLI.io on the web, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.